Hello and thank you for allowing this moment for yourself. You can let go of all focus now, just allow your attention to soften as my voice gently carries you to a place of rest. Tonight, we journey to a place where the world was both simpler and infinitely more complicated. A place where the line between faith and fact was hopelessly, dangerously blurred. We're visiting a time when justice wasn't found in a book of laws, or in the careful arguments of a courtroom, but in a glowing piece of iron, or at the bottom of a rushing river. This is the story of medieval justice, but from a very personal perspective, yours. As you begin to settle, just one gentle thought. If the space feels like a comfort to you, you might consider a soft tap on the like or subscribe button, but only if that thought feels as effortless as a quiet breath. It's always a quiet joy to know where you're listening from, so if you feel moved, you can leave the name of your city and the time on your part of the world in the comments below. But for now, that is all the effort that is required. Alright, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own breathing. And together, let's allow the story to begin. The first thing you notice isn't a sound. It isn't a sight, because your eyes are still closed, and the world is a dim, grey canvas anyway. The first thing you notice is the smell. It's a rich, earthy perfume of damp soil, cold ash, and something vaguely like wet dog. It's the smell of home. The second thing you notice is the cold, seeping up from the packed earth floor, through the thin straw pallet you're lying on. There is no mattress, no warm duvet. There is only this lumpy sack of scratchy hay between you and the ground, and it's not doing a very good job. You open your eyes. Above you, the thatched roof is a messy spider bare of woven reeds and sticks, blackened with years of smoke. There's a hole in the roof, not a chimney, just a space where most of the smoke from the central fire pit is supposed to go. It's a system that historians still debate the effectiveness of, with some arguing it was a clever ventilation method, and others concluding it just made life a constant battle against smoke inhalation. You're on the side of the second group. Your throat feels perpetually scratchy. A sliver of pale light cuts through the single, unglazed window slit in the wall, which means the sun is up, and if the sun is up, you're already late. There are no clocks here, no gentle alarms. Your schedule is dictated by the sky. The church bell in the distant village, and the rumbling in your stomach, use it up. The rough wool of your tunic prickling against your skin. It's the only thing you own, and you sleep in it, work in it, live in it. It's a bit ripe, but so is everything and everyone else. It's the great equalizer. Your home is a single, round room. It's made of what they call wattle and dub, a sort of medieval plaster made of wet soil, clay, sand, and straw, all smeared onto a woven lattice of wooden strips. You share this cozy, smoky space with your entire family. They're stirring now, shapeless lumps under thin blankets, their breath misting in the cold air. There is no privacy. The concept hasn't really been invented yet. At least not for people like you. You stand and stretch, your bare feet sinking slightly into the cool, soft dirt of the floor, in the center of the room. The embers of last night's fire are still faintly glowing. On a hook above it hangs the family's most prized possession, the cooking pot, and in that pot is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's pottage, a thick, bubbling stew of whatever grains and vegetables could be found. It's a fascinatingly efficient system. Really, the pottage is never-ending. New ingredients are just tossed in as old ones are eaten. Some claim that these perpetual stews could go for weeks, months even, constantly evolving in flavor. You just think today's version tastes suspiciously like yesterday's. You grab a wooden bowl and scoop out a grayish, lumpy portion. It's warm, and it's food. That's all you can ask for. You take your bowl and push aside the leather flap that serves as a door, stepping out into the glorious morning of the 12th century. And your foot sinks immediately, ankle deep, into cold, thick mud. The street is not a street. It's a river of mud, churned by the passage of wooden carts, livestock, and your neighbors. It's everywhere. You sometimes feel like your entire world is painted in 50 shades of brown. The air outside is sharper, carrying the scent of rain, manure, and the distant promise of bacon from the Lord's manor up on the hill. The village is slowly coming to life. A dog barks. A baby cries. Someone is already hacking away at a piece of wood with an axe. It's a perfectly normal, mundane morning. You slurp your pottage, leaning against the dark wall of your hut, feeling the weak sunlight on your face. Everything is exactly as it should be. You have no idea, of course, that your entire world is about to be turned upside down. And it's all going to start with a chicken. You're about halfway through the grey sludge in your bowl when a sound cuts through the morning calm. It's not the gentle whack of an axe or the lowing of a cow. It's a shriek. A rough, furious, human shriek. And it's getting closer. You look up and see your neighbor, Thomas, stomping through the mud river that is your shared street. His face is the color of a beet that's just been insulted. And his fists are clenched so tightly his knuckles are white. And he is heading directly for you. You've never liked Thomas. H.E.S. the kind of man who counts his chickens every morning and suspects everyone of wanting to steal them. Which, to be fair, is a reasonable suspicion in this village. But his gaze is fixed on you with a special kind of fury. He stops a few feet away, close enough that you can see the flecks of spittle flying from his mouth as he yells. You did this. You have no idea what this is, but you're pretty sure you're not going to like it. You lower your bowl of pottage. Did what? Thomas. Beatrice. He bellows, his voice cracking with emotion. My finest hen. The best layer in this whole miserable village. She's gone. A few of your other neighbors are starting to poke their heads out of their own huts. Their curiosity piqued. A public argument is the primary form of entertainment around here. Better than any traveling minstrel. You hold up your hands, trying to a calm, reasonable tone. Thomas, I'm sorry about your hen, but I haven't seen her. This is, apparently, the wrong thing to say. Liar, he screams, pointing a grimy finger at you. She roosted last night, happy as a queen, and this morning, vanished. And what do I find? He dramatically holds up his other hand. Clutched between his thumb and forefinger is a single, sad-looking grey feather. I found this right by your wall. The small crowd that is gathered lets out a collective gasp. It's damning evidence. Apparently, I said it. Near your wall. The fact that chickens, being chickens, tend to wander and drop feathers everywhere seems to be lost on everyone in the heat of the moment. You try to point this out, but your voice is drowned out by Thomas' righteous fury. He takes a deep breath, puffs out his chest, and unleashes the most powerful legal tool available to him. He raises the hue and cry. This isn't just random shouting. The hue and cry is a real, legally mandated thing. If you see a crime being committed, you are required by law to yell and raise an alarm. And anyone who hears it is legally required to stop what they're doing and join the chase to apprehend the suspect. Justice, you see, is a community project. Suddenly, Thomas' personal problem has become every earnest business. A few men from the nearby hut start walking towards you with a new sense of purpose. They aren't your friends or enemies anymore. They are now the temporary, and very reluctant, almost allure. You are officially accused. Not charged, not investigated, but accused, and in your world, an accusation carries a heavy weight. There's no police force to gather evidence. No detective to dust for fingerprints on the empty chicken coop. There is only the word of your neighbor against yours. Historians still argue about how much of medieval law was driven by genuine belief versus simple personal vendettas. Was Thomas really convinced you stole Beatrice? Or was he just still angry about that time your goat ate his prize wine in cabbage last autumn? The line between justice and score settling is perilously thin. The situation has now moved far beyond a simple denial. Thomas has invoked the power of the community. You look around at the faces of your neighbors. Yesterday, you shared a joke with that man. The day before, you helped that woman mend her fence. Today, they look at you with suspicion. The feather is passed from hand to hand, each person examining it with the gravity of a royal decree. The collective opinion is forming, like a storm cloud on the horizon, and it's not in your favor. Theft is a serious crime. In a world where most people have next to nothing, stealing someone's property, especially a food source like a chicken, is an attack on their very survival. This isn't a misdemeanor. This is a felony, and the punishment for it can be brutal. You're quiet. Naughty morning is over. Your life, as you know it, has just been put on hold. Your day now has a new, terrifying trajectory. The community has made its decision. My firm hand claps down on your shoulder. Another one grabs your arm. It's not violent. Not yet. But it's an unyielding grip that says, you are no longer in control of your own movement. Your bowl of pottage falls from your other hand, splashing into the mud with a sad, sick clop. So much for breakfast. Your public humiliation has officially begun. You are now being propelled forward, half walked, half dragged through the main thoroughfare of the village. This is the medieval version of a perp walk, and it's deeply effective. Every single person stops what they're doing to watch you go by. A woman churning butter pauses, herd usher held midair. A group of children who were throwing rocks at a pig cease their game. Their faces a mixture of awe and fear. An old man mending a fishing net looks up, his gaze following you with a slow, knowing sadness. You are the subject of every stare, every whispered comment that's just loud enough for you to hear. Stole a chicken. They say, always thought there was something shifty about them. A shudder, right by the wall. You are part of a system that historians sometimes refer to as community policing, which is a polite way of saying everyone is in everyone else's business. Many villages are organized into things called T-things, essentially a neighborhood watch group of about 10 households, all legally responsible for each other's behavior. If one person commits a crime, the other 9 are on the hook to bring them to justice. This is why your neighbors are so zealous. They aren't just helping Thomas, they're fulfilling their legal duty. If they let you go, the Reeve the Lord's official could find the whole group. Justice isn't just a moral imperative, it's a financial one. Your procession doesn't head towards a grand stone building with columns and scales of justice. There is no courthouse, there is no town hall. Instead, you are being marched towards a hut that looks remarkably like your own, only slightly larger and in a marginally better state of repair. There's a small, cooked wooden cross hanging over the door flat, and a thin curl of smoke is rising from its roof hole. This is your destination. This is the seat of power in the village. You're going to see the priest. In your world, the line between God's law and man's law is not just blurry, it's non-existent. The local priest is often the most educated person in the village, which might only mean he can read a few passages of Latin and sign his own name. He is the moral arbiter, the community counselor, the record keeper, and, when needed, the judge. Whether these priests had any formal legal training is a subject of endless debate among scholars. Some undoubtedly studied canon law, but many village priests likely made rulings based on a combination of scripture, local custom, and whatever seemed fairest at the time. Your fate rests in the hands of a man whose primary qualification is his proximity to God. Thomas, your accuser, stomps ahead of the group, puffing out his chest. H.E.S. the star of the show, the aggrieved party demanding justice. He holds the grey feather aloft like a holy relic. You, meanwhile, are the villain, the chicken thief, the disturber of the peace. The hands on your shoulders push you forward, right up to the leather flap of the priest's home. There's no knock. Thomas just barges right in, and you are shoved in after him. The air inside is thick with the smell of incense, wood smoke, and boiled cabbage. It's dark, the only light coming from the fire pit and a single tallow candle sputtering on a small wooden table. As your eyes adjust, you see him, Father Michael, H.E.S. a stout man with a fringe of grey hair and a weary expression, as if he carries the sins of the entire village on his shoulders. HES sitting on a stool, mending a sandal. He looks up, his eyes falling on Thomas, then on you. And a long, slow sigh escaped his lips. HES seen this play out 100 times before. Another squabble, another accusation. He places his sandal down with the infinite patience of a man who knows his afternoon is now ruined. The hearing is about to begin. There are no lawyers in this smoky room. There is no jury. There is just you, your furious neighbor, and the tired-looking man in the drab robes who holds your immediate future in his hands. Father Michael gestures to a low stool. "Sit," he says, his voice raspy from the smoke or perhaps from sheer exhaustion with his flock. "You sit." Thomas remained standing, too full of righteous indignation to bend his knees. "Well, Thomas," the priest asks, turning his attention to your accuser. "What is this about? You've disturbed half the village." Thomas launches into his story with the passion of a seasoned performer. He speaks of Beatrice, his beloved hen, not as a mere piece of livestock, but as a cherished member of his family. He describes her gentle clucking, her perfect eggs, her rusting nature. Then, he paints a grim picture of her empty roosting spot, the deafening silence where there should have been a contented morning squawk. And for his grand finale, he presents the feather. He holds it out on his palm for the priest to see, the single piece of physical evidence in this entire case. Father Michael looks at the feather, then at you. His expression is unreadable. HES seen 1,000 such disputes. A stolen piglet. A disputed boundary line between two turnip patches. A curse allegedly placed on a batch of milk, causing it to sour. This is the mundane, bitter fabric of village life. And you are certain, the priest says, his voice flat, that this is the one who took your hen. "As certain as I am of God's love," Thomas declares, a little too loudly. "Now it's your turn." The priest's gaze shifts to you. What do you say to this? Your heart is hammering against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet hut. You have no evidence. You can't prove you didn't do something. How do you defend yourself against a feather? You turn to the most powerful legal tool available to an accused person. You decide to make an oath. This isn't just saying, "I swear I didn't do it." An oath is a sacred, binding contract with God. To swear a false oath, a perjury, is to risk not just earthly punishment, but eternal damnation for your soul. It's the ultimate security deposit. You look Father Michael in the eye. "Father, before God and all his saints, I swear I did not steal Thomas' hen. I have not seen it. I have not touched it, and I do not know where it is. May my soul be cast into darkness if I speak a lie." You say the words with all the conviction you can muster. For a moment, there's silence. This should be enough. In many cases, a firm, clear oath from a person in good standing is sufficient to end a dispute. But your standing, it seems, is about to be questioned. Thomas goes, a short, sharp, ugly sound. His oath is worthless. He is no honest man. And here, you run into the second, more complicated part of the oath system. It's not just about what you swear. It's about whether people believe you're worth believing. To back up your oath, you often needed oath helpers, or compurators. This was a fashionably strange system. You'd need to find a certain number of people, sometimes as many as 11 or 12, who would come and swear. Not that you were innocent, but that they believed your oath was a true and clean one. It was a character reference, medieval style. Historians still debate whether these oath helpers were testifying to the facts or simply to the defendant's good reputation. But who could you get? Your cousin, who you argued with last week about a borrowed shovel. Your other neighbor, who thinks your dog barks too much. Finding 11 people who liked you enough to risk their own souls on your behalf was a tall order. Before you can even begin to mentally assemble your list of potential soul riskers, Father Michael raises a hand. Thomas, you challenge his oath. Are you prepared to make your own? I am, Thomas says. and he places his hand on the wooden cross around the priest's neck. He swears his own oath, accusing you with the same solemn, soul-risking language you just used to defend yourself. This is a legal stalemate. It is now a case of oath against oath. Whose soul is telling the truth? There is no way for the priest to know. He can't read your mind. He can't read Thomas. He is a mortal man, faced with a problem of divine truth. He rubs his temples, the weariness in his eyes deepening into a profound frustration. Words have failed. Human testimony has proven to be a muddy, unreliable path. And when the judgment of man is insufficient, there is only one option left. The priest looks at you, then at Thomas, and his voice drops to a low, serious tone. The truth is hidden from my eyes, he says slowly. We have one oath of innocence and one of accusation. Only God can see into your hearts and know what truly happened on this day. And so, we must ask him to show us a sign. A chill, colder than the morning air, runs down your spine. You know exactly what that means. The time for talking is over. A sign. The word hangs in the smoky air of the hut, heavy and cold. This isn't the kind of sign you hope for, like a break in the clouds on a rainy day. This is something else entirely. Father Michael leans forward, his expression now transformed from weary administrator to solemn theologian. He is no longer just a man settling a dispute. He is preparing to open a direct line to heaven. Human words are weak. He begins, his voice low and hypnotic. Oaths can be false, memory can be clouded, but God is never mistaken. He sees the truth as clearly as we see the sun in the sky. He knows if your heart is pure or if it is stained with the sin of theft and deceit. You want to say something, to protest, but your tongue feels thick and useless in your mouth. You're no theologian, but this sounds terrifying. You believed in God your whole life. You prayed to him for rain, for a good harvest, for your child's fever to break, but you always imagined him as a distant, powerful figure. You never thought about inviting him to personally officiate a case involving a missing chicken. Therefore, the priest continues, his eyes locked on you. We will perform a trial, an ordeal. It is not a punishment. You must understand this. He pauses, letting the words sink in. It is a test, a sacred invocation. We will create a condition, a trial for your body to endure, and we will ask the Lord to intervene. If you are innocent, as you have sworn in your oath, God will protect you. He will perform a miracle. He will shield your flesh from harm, or heal it with divine speed. As a sign of your purity, you look down at your hands. They're calloused and grimy from a lifetime of work, but they are just flesh and bone. The idea of them being subjected to some condition that requires a literal miracle to survive makes a cold knot of dread tighten in your stomach. And what if you're guilty? You know you're not, but the priest answers the unspoken question anyway. If you are guilty, he says, his voice dropping another notch. If your oath was a lie spoken in this sacred space, then God will simply stand aside. He will allow nature to take its course. The fire will burn. The water will claim you. Your wound will fester. And by this sign, your guilt will be made plain to all. This is the insane, unshakable logic you're now trapped in. It's a divine flip of a coin where you don't even get to see the result right away. Thomas, your neighbor, is nodding along, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. He is utterly convinced of your guilt, and therefore utterly convinced that God will cause in his opinion. Why wouldn't he? Thomas is a good man. He goes to Mass. He says his prayers. Of course God is on his side. Historians still debate the true nature of the system. Was it an active, profound, communal faith? A genuine belief that God would play an active role in the justice system every single time he was asked? Or was it, perhaps, a terrifyingly effective to love psychological control? Think about it. If you were actually guilty, would you risk it? Many an accused person, when faced with the prospect of having their guilt or innocence tested by a glowing hot piece of iron, would suddenly find their memory improving. Confessions would just pour out. It was, in its own way, a highly effective, if brutal, method of getting a result. But you have nothing to confess. You are innocent, so you should be fine. Right. The Lord will protect you. A miracle will occur. You try to hold on to that thought, to feel a surge of righteous confidence, but all you feel is a deep, primal fear. What if you're not worthy? What if you forgot to say your prayers last Tuesday? What if God is busy with a more important miracle, like a war or a plague, and doesn't have time to supervise your little chicken trial? Your innocence feels like a very thin shield against what is about to happen. Father Michael stands up, his shadow dancing on the wattle daub wall. The theological lecture is over. It's time to move on to the practical details. The law and custom of this land offers several paths for God to show us his truth. He intones, you will be given a choice in the matter. A choice. For the first time in this whole encounter, you feel a tiny flicker of hope. A choice sounds good. Maybe one of the options is just to promise to be a better person from now on. You look up at the priest, waiting for him to present the options. You are not prepared for the menu of misery he is about to offer. A choice. Hope is a fragile thing, and yours is promptly and thoroughly crushed as Father Michael begins to lay out the options on this terrible menu. He presents them not as punishments, but as invitations, opportunities for God to reveal the truth. It's the most terrifying sales pitch you have ever heard, and you're a captive audience. First, he says, his voice taking on the rhythmic quality of a sermon, there is the iudicium ferri condenters, the ordeal of hot iron. He describes it with a chilling calmness. He, the priest, would take a piece of iron, usually weighing between 1 and 3 pounds. He would place it in the embers of a fire during a holy mass, blessing it with sacred prayers as it heats, asking God to imbue it with his truth-seeing power. The metal would be heated until it grows a menacing, angry red. Then, you would be brought forward. Your hand would be sprinkled with holy water, a final, tiny protection against the immense heat to come. You would then be required to take the glowing iron in your bare hand and carry it a set distance, usually 9 paces, each one measured heel to toe, 9 steps, with the smell of your own searing flesh filling your nostrils, while the entire village watches to see if you will falter. God will protect the hand of the innocent, the priest says, as if this were the most obvious fact in the world. You stare at your own hand, imagining it wrapped around that heat. You try to picture a divine shield, some invisible glove of faith, protecting you. All you can picture is the skin blistering, the muscle cooking. It does not feel like a choice for an innocent person. It feels like a formality before the inevitable maiming. Or he continues, seamlessly moving to the next item on the menu. There is the iudicium ferventes, the ordeal of hot water. He gestures vaguely towards the corner where a large, black cauldron sits, normally used for rendering lard. His plan is similar. The pot would be filled with water and set upon a roaring fire. While it heats to a furious, rolling boil, he would again bless it, consecrating this mundane vessel into an instrument of divine will. A stone, also blessed, would be dropped into the churning water. Your task, should you choose this path, would be to plunge your arm into the cauldron and retrieve it, not just your fingertips. The law is very specific on this. For a minor crime, you might only have to go and up to your wrist, but for a felony, like theft, it's to the elbow. This little detail is a fascinating and horrifying example of medieval legal precision, a whole system of tiered scalding. The priest would be there, ready to grab your arm as it comes out, to see the work of God or the lack thereof. You glance at Thomas. H.E.S. listening to all of this with rapt attention, a grim smile playing on his lips. He can already picture it. He can see you failing, proving what he has known all along. The priest isn't finished. Finally, he says, there is the iudicium ferventes, the ordeal of cold water. This one, he explains, is different. It relies not on a burn, but on the purity of the water itself. He explains that a river or a deep pond is considered a pure element of God's creation. As such, it will naturally accept that which is pure and reject that which is tainted by evil. If you choose this ordeal, you would be bound, often with your right thumb tied to your left big toe, a position that makes swimming impossible. You would then be cast into the water on the end of a rope. If you are innocent, the pure water will recognize your pure soul and accept you. You will sink. If you are guilty, however, the water will reject your corrupted form. You will float. You let that sink in. Sinking is good. Floating is bad. It's the most baffling, counterintuitive logic you've ever heard. You have to hope you don't float, but also that the person holding the rope is paying attention and pulls you out before you achieve a state of permanent, innocent immersion. Historians have been arguing about this one for centuries. Was it a now-in situation? Did people actually drown proving their innocence? Or was there a kind of trick to it? A practiced method of making sure the innocent sank just long enough to be declared pure before being hauled out, gasping and shivering. The practical application of this ordeal remains a topic of intense, unresolved debate. So, these are your choices. A searing burn on your palm, a deep scald on your arm, or a terrifying, plunge into the freezing local river, where you have to hope you'll be a bad swimmer. There is none of the above option. You look from the priest's expectant face to Thomas' smug one. You have to choose your ordeal. Your mind races. The iron involves walking. 9 chances to drop it and be declared guilty instantly. The cold water is a confusing paradox of sinking and drowning. The hot water is terrible, but it feels wonderfully straightforward. One quick, agonizing moment. In out, and it's done. You'll put your faith in that 1 second. You take a shaky breath. The water, you say, your voice barely a whisper. The hot water. Father Michael nods slowly, as if you have just chosen a dish from a tavern menu. So be it, he declares. The ordeal by hot water it is. But first, you must prepare your soul. You thought the worst part was choosing your own personal nightmare. You were wrong. The worst part, it turns out, is the waiting. Father Michael explains that you cannot simply walk out of his hut and stick your arm in a pot of boiling water. That would be barbaric. No, this is a sacred rite. It requires preparation. Specifically, it requires you to prepare your soul. And the chosen method for this is 3 days of focused prayer and near total fasting. You are not sent home. To allow you to return to your family would be to risk spiritual contamination from worldly matters. Instead, you are escorted to the small, cold village church. This is to be your home for the next 72 hours. It's a simple stone building, smelling of damp rot, old incense, and the faint, sweet scent of decay. Your guards, to sturdy men from the village tithing, leave you on a wooden bench near the altar and take up a position by the door. You are not a prisoner. You are told, but a penitent. It feels remarkably similar. The fasting begins immediately. Your last meal was that half bowl of pottage, and its meager warmth has long since faded. Dull and insistent, gnawing emptiness begins to grow in your belly. The priest informs you that you will be given a small piece of coarse bread and some water each evening. That's it. A full stomach creates sinful humors, he explains patiently. It distracts the soul from God. You must be empty to receive his judgment. It's a curious theological idea. Apparently, God is more likely to notice your innocence if you're dizzy from hunger. The prayers are endless. Father Michael comes and goes, leading you along. Chanted Latin phrases that you repeat without understanding. You kneel on the cold flagstones until your knees are numb. Your head bowed, trying to focus on the divine. But it's hard to contemplate the eternal mysteries of the soul when your stomach is staging a loud, gurgling protest. The priest's droning voice, the flickering candlelight, and your own growing weakness combine to create a strange, dreamlike state. You're floating, disconnected from your own body. Historians are still divided on the true purpose of this 3-day ritual. Some see it as an expression of profound piety, a genuine attempt by the community to ensure the ordeal was conducted with the utmost spiritual gravity. They believe people truly felt that this preparation would purify the accused, making them a clean vessel for God's miracle. Others argue it was a far more practical, even cynical, form of psychological conditioning. Starve a person, isolate them, subject them to endless, repetitive rituals, and you break down their will. A guilty person might confess. An innocent person would be so weakened and disoriented that they would be more submissive, more accepting of what was to come. You also learn a few strange rules about this purification. It's not just fasting, but a specific kind of abstinence. You are told not to cut your hair or your fingernails. This peculiar detail is a subject of some debate. But one theory is that it was about keeping the body whole for God's judgment, not allowing any part of it to be cast off. It's a small thing, but it adds to the feeling of being set apart, of your own body no longer being completely your own. By the second day, the hunger has become a dull, constant take. The world outside the church's narrow slit windows seems a million miles away. You hear the faint sounds of village life, a hammer on an anvil, a child's laugh, and it feels like a memory from another life. Your life now is this cold stone, this empty stomach, this looming dread. You find yourself bargaining with God. You promise him anything. You'll be a better person. You'll never complain about pottage again. You'd even be nice to Thomas. Just make the water not be hot, just for a second. On the morning of the 3rd day, the church door creaks open. The light that spills in seems unnaturally bright, and you have to shield your eyes. Father Michael enters, dressed in his finest robes, the ones he usually only wears for Easter. Behind him are your 2 guards. Their faces are grim. No one meets your eyes. It is time. You are helped to your feet. Your legs are unsteady. Your head light. They don't drag you. They support you, one on each arm, as they lead you out of the church and into the daylight. The entire village is there. It feels like a festival day. They have all gathered in the open space between the church and the blacksmith's forge, and in the center of that space, you see it, a large fire, crackling merrily, and over that fire, suspended from a thick wooden tripod, is a cauldron. A thin plume of steam is already beginning to rise from the water's surface. You stand there, swaying slightly, held up by the men on either side of you. The warmth from the fire feels good on your skin, a welcome contrast to the damp chill of the church. But the sight of the steam rising from the cauldron turns your stomach to ice. The faces in the crowd are a blur. You see your wife, her face pale, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles are bone white. You see Thomas, your accuser, looking stern and pious, as if he is merely a humble instrument of a grander plan. Most of the others are just watching. Their expressions a mixture of morbid curiosity and genuine piety. This is the most exciting thing that will happen all year. Before the main event can begin, Father Michael steps forward and raises his hands, calling for silence. The low murmur of the crowd dies down. He is no longer the tired man mending a sandal in a smoky hut. He is the voice of authority, the conduit between this muddy patch of earth and the vast, unknowable heavens. He begins to speak, and his voice carries across the clearing. Let all here bear witness, he proclaims. We are not gathered for a spectacle of cruelty. We are gathered for an act of profound faith. We are here to ask for the judgment of God Almighty. He explains the logic, not for your benefit, but for the whole community. It's a reaffirmation of their entire worldview. The laws of man are imperfect, he says, gesturing around at the assembled villagers. Our eyes can be deceived by lies. Our ears can be misled by false testimony. We are fallible, but the law of God is perfect and absolute. It was a deeply held belief. To them, the world was governed by 2 sets of laws operating simultaneously. The laws of nature, which made fire hot and water wet, and the laws of God, which could override the laws of nature at any time. A miracle wasn't a violation of physics. It was simply the boss pulling rank. This ordeal, he continues, his voice rising, is not a mere test of endurance. It is a formal summons. It is a paucitum Dei, a plea before God. We are humbly, and with a pure heart, asking the Creator of all things to sit as judge in this case, for the truth is known only to Him. This is the crux of it all. A strange and fascinating bit of theological legal thinking. You aren't just being tested. You are the living, breathing subject of a divine lawsuit. God is being formally called upon to provide testimony in the form of a miracle. You listen to this, and on some level, it almost makes sense. The logic is a perfect, closed loop. If God is all-powerful and all-knowing, and if He cares about justice, then why wouldn't He intervene? Why wouldn't He make the water cool for an innocent person? To the medieval mind, it was stranger to think that He would stand by and do nothing. Historians still fiercely debate how universally this was believed. Were the priests and nobles who administered these trials true believers in divine intervention? Or did they recognize a powerful tool for forcing confessions and maintaining social order? It's a question we can likely never answer. Father Michael then turns his gaze directly on you. Your weakness and hunger make it feel like he is peering directly into your soul. If you are innocent, he says, his voice softening slightly, you have nothing to fear. God will not abandon His faithful servant. He will command the water to be as cool as the waters of the Jordan. He will shield your flesh. He will send His angels to protect you. Your innocence will shine forth like the sun. He pauses. Then his voice becomes hard as stone again. But if you are guilty, if you have lied to this community and blasphemed with a false oath before God, then He will show us that truth as well. He will simply let the water be water, and your sin will be revealed in your scalded flesh for all to see. It is the perfect system. It has no loopholes. Any outcome is proof of the system working. If you are unharmed, you are innocent. If you are burned, you are guilty. There is no third option where the ordeal itself is a fraud and brutal practice. The result is preordained to be interpreted as divine will. It's a legal and spiritual checkmate. You are no longer just a person accused of stealing a chicken. You are a walking, talking theological question, and your answer is about to be written on your skin. With the sermon complete, Father Michael turns away from the crowd. His gaze falls upon the steaming cauldron and the fire. The time for words is over. The theoretical part of your day has concluded. Now, the practical demonstration is about to begin. He walks slowly, reverently, towards the instrument of your judgment. The crowd is completely silent now, a ring of held breath around the central fire. You watch as Father Michael approaches the bubbling cauldron. He is no longer speaking to the crowd, but to God. He begins a series of prayers and blessings. His voice a low, rhythmic Latin chant that fills the clearing. This isn't just a pot of hot water anymore. It's being transformed into a sacred object, an altar for your judgment. He takes a small wooden flask from a pouch at his belt and sprinkles holy water into the cauldron. You hear the drops hiss as they hit the boiling surface. It's a symbolic act, meant to purify the water, to make it worthy of receiving God's command. But to your terrified mind, it just looks like he's adding seasoning. He makes the sign of the cross over the steam, his hand cutting through the shimmering air. Exorcizioti, creatura aeque, he chants, I exorcise you, creature of water. He is speaking directly to the water itself, commanding it in the name of God to cast out any evil or falsehood. He is essentially ordering the water to become a lie detector. It's a fascinating insight into the medieval worldview, where the physical and spiritual were so intertwined that even inanimate elements were believed to possess a kind of moral agency. The water isn't just a tool, it's an active participant in the trial. Next, he turns his attention to the fire. He blesses it, too, asking God to let this fire be a pure flame, a flame of judgment, not of random destruction. The idea was to spiritually separate the instruments of the ordeal from their ordinary, mundane functions. This wasn't the same fire you'd use to cook your pottage, nor the same water you'd use for washing. They had been elevated, consecrated, turned into liturgical instruments, just like the chalice he used in Mass. Whether the priests themselves truly believed these blessings altered the physical properties of the elements is a question historians love to argue about. Some certainly did, their faith absolute. Others may have seen it as a necessary part of the ritual, a way to add gravity and divine sanction to what was, at its core, a brutal legal procedure. The ceremony was as much for the benefit of the crowd as it was for God. It reinforced the idea that this was not a savage punishment, but a wholly and orderly process, officiated by the church itself. After blessing the fire and water, Father Michael pulls a smooth, grey stone from his pouch. He holds it up for everyone to see. This stone, he announces, his voice ringing with authority, is the truth you seek. He blesses the stone as well, anointing it with a drop of holy oil from a tiny vial. He prays over it, asking that it sink quickly and await the hand of the innocent. Then, with a final prayer, he leans over the cauldron and drops the stone in. There is no splash, just a quiet drop as it disappears into the roiling water. The last piece of the apparatus is in place. The stage is set. The priest turns and looks at you. He gives a slow, deliberate nod to the men who are holding you. Their grip tightens on your arms, and they begin to walk you forward, towards the fire. Each step is a lifetime. You can feel the heat on your face, the air shimmering around you. The sound of the bubbling water grows louder, a hungry, menacing sound. Your entire world has shrunk to this small circle of dirt, this fire, this pot. You are brought to a stop, just a few feet from the cauldron. The heat is intense. The steam billows up, smelling of wood smoke and hot metal and something else, the smell of fear. Father Michael approaches you. He holds a small bowl of holy water. He dips his fingers into it and flicks the cold drops onto your right arm, the arm you will use. May God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit protect you, if you are innocent, he murmurs, his voice for your ears only. The cold water on your skin is a shock. It's the last sensation of normalcy you will feel. The final prayer has been said. The instruments have been blessed. The crowd is watching. God, presumably, is also watching. Everything is ready. There is nothing left to do now but to reach into the depths and find out what truth awaits you there. The final blessing hangs in the hot, shimmering air between you and the cauldron. The holy water on your arm evaporates almost instantly. The men holding you give a slight push, moving you a single, crucial step closer. You are now at the very edge of the fire's reach, standing before the tripod as if it were an altar. And you, it seems, are the sacrifice. Father Michael raises a hand, not in blessing this time, but as a signal for all to pay attention. He is now the master of ceremonies, the referee in this contest between you and the divine. Unlike any contest, this one has rules. Very specific, very strange rules. The law of God is not arbitrary. He announces, his voice a clear, steady counterpoint to the wild bubbling of the water. And so, we shall follow the procedure set down by the wisdom of our forefathers. He points a finger, not at you, but at your arm, because the accusation is one of felony theft, a grave sin. The trial requires the immersion of the arm to the elbow. He pauses, letting the words sink into the assembled crowd. This isn't a small detail. It's a critical piece of legal theology. There was a whole, unwritten code to this, for a lesser crime. Like lying or a minor trespass, one might only have to submerge their hand to the wrist. It was a graduated system of potential agony. Historians still marvel at the bizarre legalism of it all. The attempt to create a precise, bureaucratic framework for a miracle. It's the terms and conditions for your potential maiming. And you're about to click I agree. One of the men holding you, a burly blacksmith named Osgood whose hands feel like worn leather, lets go of your shoulder. He takes the sleeve of your rough wool tunic and begins to push it up your arm, bunching the coarse fabric tightly at your shoulder. He exposes your entire forearm to the hot air. You look down at it. It seems pale and fragile, a thing of skin and hair and veins, completely unsuited for what is about to happen. Father Michael continues his instructions, ensuring the entire community understands that this is being done by the book. The cauldron has been measured, he declares. The water stands at the prescribed depth. The stone has been sanctified. Nothing has been left to chance, so that the will of God may be clearly shown. You find yourself wondering about the specifics. How did they measure the heat? There are no thermometers. Was there a rule? Did the priest dip a finger in, or did they just rely on the furious bubbling standard? This, too, is a subject of academic debate. Some medieval texts give surprisingly specific instructions, even for things like this, while others are maddeningly vague. It's argued that the procedure likely varied greatly from village to village, a mix of church law and local folk custom, creating a patchwork of justice across the land. The ordeal you're facing might be slightly different from one happening 100 miles away. A comforting thought. Perhaps the boiling water is just boiled over there. Your arm is now bare, the sleeve of your tunic a tight band cutting off the circulation. Oscar takes your hand, his grip surprisingly gentle, and holds it out over the steaming water. Your muscles scream in protest. Every instinct in your body is telling you to pull back, to run, to do anything but this. But the other man's grip is like iron on your other arm. There's no escape. You are being positioned. Your feet are planted firmly on the dirt. Your body is angled just so. The priest comes to stand beside you, his face a mask of intense concentration. He is watching the water, watching your arm. He is looking for the sign. The sound of the cauldron is the only thing you can hear. The world has gone silent. The faces of the crowd, the rustle of the trees, the distant sound of a cowbell, it has all faded away. There is only the bubbling and the heat. Then the terrible, terrible anticipation. Your heart is a frantic bird trapped in your chest. You try to pray, but your mind is a white-hot blank. All you can think is, please, please, please. Father Michael leans in close, his breath smelling of cabbage and communion wine. His voice is a low whisper, meant only for you. When I give the word, you will not hesitate. You will reach in, you will grasp the stone, and you will pull it out. Do you understand? You manage a nod, a tiny, jerky movement. You understand the instructions. You do not understand how you are possibly going to make your body obey them. He straightens up. He takes a deep breath. He looks to the sky, as if for a final confirmation from his divine superior. Then he looks at you. His eyes are clear and steady. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, he says, his voice suddenly booming across the clearing. Let the truth be known. Now, the word now echoes in your ears, but your body refuses to obey. It's a complete, systemic rebellion of muscle and nerve against conscious thought. Your arm is locked, a rigid bar of defiance, but you are not in control. Osgood, the blacksmith, doesn't hesitate. With a grunted effort, he shoves your arm forward and down, plunging it into the cauldron. The first sensation is not pain. It's a profound, confusing shock, a sensory overload that your brain can't immediately process. It's the feeling of impossible heat, the violent bubbling of the water against your skin, 1,000 tiny, angry fists pounding against you. It's a wetness that is also a searing dryness. For a fraction of a second, the world disappears into a roar of white noise and scalding pressure. Then, the pain arrives. It is a pure, clean, or consuming fire. It screams up your arm, through your shoulder, and into the base of your skull, eclipsing every other thought. Your throat opens in a silent, ragged scream that you can't hear over the roaring in your own ears. You are vaguely aware of the men holding you. Their grips like iron clamps, preventing you from recoiling. from pulling away. You are locked in this moment of agony. Your mind, in a desperate search for an escape, flashes with disconnected images. You see the face of your child, sleeping peacefully on a straw pallet. You see Thomas, his face a mask of smug certainty. You try to summon a prayer, a plea to God for the promised miracle, but the words are just meaningless sounds, burned away by the searing heat. Where is the divine intervention? Where is the cooling touch of an angel's wing? There is only the water, and the fire, and the undeniable reality of your own cooking flesh. Deep in the churning chaos, your fingers flail, searching for the stone. The bottom of the cauldron is rough, coated in years of soot and grime. You scrape your knuckles against the hot iron. Is that it? No, just a rivet. Your lungs are bursting. The smell of something acrid and unpleasant fills your nostrils, and you have a dim, horrifying realization that it is the smell of you. This single, elongated moment is the core of the ordeal. It's a subject of intense fascination for historians. Did anyone ever pass this test unharmed? Accounts are murky and often written by chroniclers with a clear agenda, eager to report a miracle. Some modern scholars speculate about the possibility of psychological or physiological anomalies. Perhaps some individuals, in a state of extreme shock or religious fervor, entered a state where they didn't immediately register the pain, which could be misinterpreted by onlookers, or perhaps, more cynically, the system was rigged. It is still debated whether a sympathetic priest might occasionally use water that was merely hot, rather than furiously boiling, for a defendant he believed to be innocent, a little divine assistance, administered by human hands. But there is no such assistance for you today. The water is boiling, the priest is watching, and your arm is on fire. Finally, you're numb. Clumsy fingers bump against something smooth and drown. The stone, it's hotter than the water, a concentrated point of heat that seems to burn right through your skin to the bone. You clench your fingers around it. It's a clumsy, spastic grip, but it holds. Out, you hear Father Michael's voice, distant and distorted. With a final, desperate surge of will, you pull. Your arm comes free of the water with a sound like a wet log being pulled from a fire. The sudden contact with the air is a new and different kind of agony. You hold the hot, dripping stone in your trembling hand for a single, theatrical moment. Then you let it drop into the dirt. It lands with a soft thud, sending up a tiny puff of steam. You stumble back, finally released by your handlers. You cradle your arm to your chest, your whole body shaking uncontrollably. You don't dare to look at it. You can only feel the throbbing, radiating heat. The ordeal itself, the plunge, lasted only a few seconds. But it was the longest second of your life. And it is not over, not by a long shot. The real trial has just begun. You stand there, trembling, cradling the source of the immense, throbbing pain against your chest. You refuse to look at your arm. You can feel the heat radiating from it, a horrifying furnace you are attached to. In your mind's eye, you see it as a rowan, an angry, red canvas of destruction. The world around you slowly comes back into focus. The crowd is silent. Their faces a mixture of pity and awe. They have just witnessed a direct interaction with the divine, and the result is ambiguous. You were not miraculously protected, but you did not faint, or drop the stone, or die of shock. You completed the task. Father Michael steps forward, his face unreadable. His role has shifted again. He is no longer the prosecutor or the master of ceremonies. He is now the holy administrator, tasked with the crucial next step. He raises a hand, and a young boy from the village, an altar server, scurries forward. He carries a small wooden box. This is not an act of mercy, the priest announces to the crowd, though his eyes are on your arm. It is an act of legal procedure. The judgment is not yet given. God's miracle is not always in the prevention of the wound, but in the healing of it. This is a critical piece of theological fine print. It's the divine loophole. Failure to be protected from the fire wasn't a guilty verdict. It just meant the miracle was scheduled for a later delivery. He opens the box. Inside, you see a roll of clean, white linen, a small, dark lump of wax, and a metal object with a wooden handle. It's a seal, like the kind the Lord would use to stamp a letter, but this one is carved with the cross of the church. We must now bind the wound. Father Michael continues. It will be sealed, so that no earthly hand may interfere with God's work. No poultice, no salve, no human remedy can be applied. The healing must be his and his alone. This is the core of the post-ordeal process. The site of the judgment had to be secured, like a modern-day crime scene. It was to prevent you from cheating by applying some secret healing ointment, and also to prevent your enemies like Thomas from rubbing dirt in the wound to ensure it got infected. The priest takes your wrist. His touch is surprisingly gentle, but soon, he slowly, carefully, straightens your arm out. You can't help it. A low groan escapes your lips as the damaged skin is pulled taut. You finally steal a glance at it. It's red and raw, patches of skin already beginning to blister. It's a horrifying sight, and you quickly look away. Father Michael takes the roll of linen and begins to wrap your arm, starting from the wrist and working his way up past the elbow. The first touch of the cool cloth is a moment of exquisite relief, but it's quickly followed by a new, sharp agony as it presses against the burned flesh. You bite down on your lip, tasting blood. He wraps it snugly, not too tight, but with a practiced efficiency. Your arm is now a featureless white club. This is where historians still argue about the specifics. Was there truly nothing applied to the wound? Some medieval legal texts are adamant that the binding should be clean linen only, but others wonder if, in some cases, a priest might have discreetly applied a salve before the binding, perhaps a mixture of herbs and fats under the guise of a blessing. Was it a pure test of faith, or was there an element of folk medicine quietly at play? It's a debate that pits the official doctrine against the possibility of quiet, human compassion. With your arm fully wrapped, the priest takes the lump of wax. He holds it near the fire until it softens, then dabs a generous blob of it onto the linen, right in the middle of your forearm, where the knot is tied. Then he takes the seal. He licks at a strange, mundane gesture in the middle of this sacred rite and presses it firmly into the warm wax. He holds it there for a moment, then pulls it away. There, on your arm, is the official seal of the church, a cross embedded in a circle of dark wax. You are now a sealed letter, a divine parcel. The temple sticker is in place. No one can interfere with the contents. Father Michael steps back, observing his work with a nod of satisfaction. The ordeal is complete, he declares. The judgment now rests for 3 days. You will be taken to your home to rest. On the morning of the 3rd day, we will gather here again. I will break the seal and unbind the arm, and we will see what message God has written for us. He turns to you, and for the first time, you see a flicker of something that might be pity in his eyes. Pray, my child, he whispers. Pray for a miracle. The walk home is a surreal, shuffling procession. The men who held you, their duty done, now support you as you stumble through the mud. Your legs still weak from hunger and shock. The crowd parts to let you through. There stares a heavy blanket of morbid fascination. No one speaks to you. You are a sacred object now, a sealed experiment in progress. To interfere would be to meddle with God's work. Your wife rushes to your side, her face a mess of tears and terror, but one of the men holds her back gently. Not yet, mistress, he says, his voice slow. He must not be touched. You are delivered to the door of your own hut like a fragile, damaged parcel. They help you over the threshold and lower you on to your straw pallet. And then, they are gone. The leather flap falls, plunging the small space into its usual smoky dimness. You are alone with your wife, and with the immense, throbbing pain in your arm. Thus begins the agony of the wait. The next 3 days are a blur of pain, fever, and whispered prayers. The world shrinks to the size of your lumpy bed and the pulsating fire in your limb. The pain is a living thing. a malevolent presence in the hut with you. It has a rhythm, a tidal ebb and flow. Sometimes it's a sharp, stabbing agony that makes you cry out. Other times it's a deep, dull, burning ache that seems to soak into your very bones. You can feel the heat of it through the linen wrapping, a constant, varying warmth. Your wife does what she can. She brings you sips of water. She places a cool, damp rag on your forehead, which is slick with the sweat of a rising fever. She cannot touch the arm. She cannot change the dressing. She can only watch, her face etched with a desperate, helpless anxiety. She is your only nurse, but her hands are tied by divine law. Sleep offers no escape. When you do manage to drift off, your dreams are a feverish torment. You are back at the fire, plunging your arm into the water again and again. You dream of a stone, growing larger and larger until it fills the whole world. You dream of Thomas's face, snaring at you from the steam. You wake up with a gasp, your heart pounding, the pain in your arm a brutal reminder that the nightmare is real. You spend your waking hours in a state of obsessive, terrified speculation. You try to feel what is happening under the bandages. Is that a sharp sting of infection, or the gentle tingle of miraculous healing? Is the swelling going down, or is it getting worse? You are hyper-aware of every twitch, every throb, every subtle shift in the landscape of your pain. You are trying to read the will of God through the nerve endings in your own flesh. This period of waiting was a crucial, and psychologically brutal, part of the ordeal. Historians point out that it was, in its own way, a continuation of the trial. The physical test was over, but the mental and spiritual test was in full swing. Could you maintain your faith? Could you trust in God's justice even as your body screamed that something was terribly wrong? The entire village was also waiting, speculating. Gossip would be flying. Did you see his face? He barely flinched, a sure sign of innocence. I heard him cry out. His oath must have been false. Your fate was being debated and decided around every fire pit in the village, long before the bandages came off. You also know, with a sickening certainty, what the stakes are. If the wound is clean, if it is healing nicely, you will be declared innocent. The miracle will be proclaimed. Your name will be cleared. You will be celebrated as a man whom God himself has vindicated. But if the wound is festering, if there is what the law calls an IES, or pus, then you are guilty. And the punishment for felony theft is not a fine. It's not a few days in the stocks. It could be blinding. It could be the amputation of a hand. In some places, for serious enough theft, it could even be hanging. You are not just waiting to see if your arm is infected. You are waiting to find out if you will be mutilated, or even killed. The seal on your arm is not just a piece of wax. It is a ticking clock, counting down the moments to either exoneration or utter ruin. Each throb of pain in your arm feels like another tick of that terrible clock. The second day passes in a feverish haze. By the third morning, you are weak, exhausted, and sick with dread. The wait is almost over. The morning of the third day arrives not with a gentle dawn, but with a sharp, authoritative rap on your door frame. The two men from the tithing are back. Their faces are set like stone, betraying nothing. They help you to your feet, and the world sways violently. The fever has left you weak, and the pain in your arm is a monstrous, living entity. You are half walked, half carried out into the pale morning light, which feels like a physical blow against your tired eyes. The entire village is waiting. Again, they are gathered in the same clearing, a silent, expectant audience. The fire pit is cold now, the circle of black ash. The cauldron is gone. This is not a place of trial anymore. It is a place of judgment. You are led to the center of the circle, where Father Michael stands waiting. He is dressed in his simple robes today, looking more like a village priest and less like a divine inquisitor. Beside him, clutching a new, clean roll of linen, is a local woman known for her skill as a healer. Her presence is a small, welcome sign of human compassion in this deeply strange ceremony. Thomas, your accuser, stands at the front of the crowd, his arms crossed, his face a thundercloud of suspense. You are made to sit on a low stool. Your heart is hammering a frantic rhythm against your ribs. This is it, the final moment. Father Michael raises his hands for silence. Though the crowd is already deathly quiet, 3 days have passed. He intones, his voice carrying in the still air. We have committed this matter to the hands of God. We have sealed the wound against the interference of man. Now, we shall see what verdict has been rendered. He kneels in front of you. He takes your bandaged arm gently in his hands. You flinch. But his grip is steady. He holds it up for the crowd to see, turning it slowly so everyone can see the dark wax seal. Unbroken, still pressed into the linen. The seal is intact. He declares, the judgment has been protected. With a small knife, he carefully cracks the wax seal, the pieces falling away onto the dirt. The crowd collectively inhales. The first step is done. Then, slowly, deliberately, he begins to unwrap the bandage. Round and round his hands go, unwinding the linen that has been your prison for 3 days. With each turn, the tension in the air grows thicker. You close your eyes, unable to watch. You can feel the air on your skin as the final layer is pulled away, a strange, cool sensation after days of confinement. There is a long, profound silence. You can hear your own ragged breathing. You can hear the distant bleating of a sheep. Finally, you force your eyes open. Father Michael is staring at your arm with an expression of intense, unblinking concentration. He is no longer a priest. He is a diagnostician, a divine physician reading the symptoms of your soul. This is the moment historians have long debated. Just how objective could this final judgment possibly be? The priest was looking for signs of healing versus signs of putrefaction. But without modern medical knowledge, what did that mean? I read, angry-looking wound might be seen as a sign of guilt, while a pale, clean one might signal innocence. Was he seeing the will of God, or was he seeing what he, and the community, already expected to see? He leans closer, his nose just inches from your skin. He is looking for SNIS. He is looking for the thick, yellowish sign of a festering, corrupted wound. The presence of what we would call pus was considered the definitive sign of guilt, the physical manifestation of the sin rotting the soul. A clean blister, even a large one, could be interpreted as God's clean work. You look down at your arm. It is a mess of red skin and large, weeping blisters. It's a horrifying sight. But as you stare, you see what the priest is seeing. The blisters, while terrible, are filled with a clear, watery fluid. There is no thick, yellow corruption. There is no smell of decay. It is a clean burn. Father Michael gently prods the skin at the edge of a blister with his finger. You hiss in pain. He ignores it. He is looking, listening, smelling. He is using every sense available to him to interpret the divine message written on your flesh. The crowd leans forward as one, trying to see. Thomas is on his tiptoes, his face a knot of anxiety. Finally, after an eternity, Father Michael straightens up. He turns to face the crowd. He takes a deep breath, and his face breaks into a slow, solemn smile. Dear gracious, he proclaims, his voice booming with relief and triumph. Thanks be to God. The wound is clean. The flesh is healing. God has proclaimed this man innocent. A great, collective sigh goes through the crowd, followed by a ripple of murmurs and nods. You feel a wave of dizziness so profound you think you might fall off the stool. Innocent. The word is the most beautiful sound you have ever heard. Your wife cries out, a sob of pure, unadulterated relief. Thomas' face has gone slack with disbelief. He stares at your arm, then at the priest, as if he cannot comprehend what has happened. The system, in which he had placed such absolute faith, has just returned a result he was certain was impossible. Your ordeal is over. You have been to hell and back. You have a severely burned arm that will likely pain you for the rest of your life. But you are innocent. And in the insane logic of your world, that counts as a victory. Your victory is a strange, painful, and deeply confusing thing. The woman with the healing knowledge now steps forward, her face a mask of professional calm. While the village celebrates your divine vindication, she gets to work on the earthly consequences. She gently cleans your arm with cool water and applies a thick, greenish salve that smells of herbs and beeswax. The relief is immediate and profound. As she wraps your arm in fresh, clean linen, you look around at the scene. Your neighbors are clapping you on the back, your good back, and congratulating you. Thomas, your accuser, has vanished, slinking away through the crowd, his righteous certainty shattered. You are, for today, a local hero, a walking, talking miracle. But your moment of glory is interrupted by a new commotion at the edge of the clearing. Another small, grim procession is making its way towards the cold fire pit. It's a man you know, a quiet farmer named William, and he is being half dragged, half led by his own tithing group. His face is pale with a familiar, sick dread. His accuser, a merchant from the nearby town, is walking beside Father Michael, speaking in low, angry tones. You learn, through the village grapevine that is now buzzing with this new development, that William has been accused of short-weighing sacks of grain. It's another serious offense, a crime of sword that, like your chicken theft, undermines the fragile trust the whole community is built on. William, like you, had sworn an oath of innocence, and his accuser, like Thomas, had sworn an oath of accusation. And so, the village finds itself ready for another Palkadam day, another plea before God. But William, you soon learn, has made a different choice from the menu of misery. You watch, a spectator now, as the grim preparations begin anew. The blacksmith, Oscar, rebuilds the fire, but this time he does not fetch the cauldron. Instead, he takes a single, flat bar of iron, about the length of your forearm on, weighing perhaps 2 pounds, and places it directly into the heart of the growing flames. This will be the ordeal by hot iron, the iodine condensers. As the iron begins to heat, turning from a dull grey to a menacing, cherry red in the embers, Father Michael begins the consecration ritual once more. The prayers are slightly different, tailored to the specific instrument of judgment. He blesses the fire to be a pure and truthful flame. He blesses the iron, commanding it to be a vessel of God's justice, to burn the guilty and leave the innocent untouched. The logic, you realize, is exactly the same, but the aesthetics are somehow more terrifying. The boiling water was a chaotic, faceless force. This glowing bar of metal feels personal, like a weapon forged in the fires of damnation itself. It seems more direct, more intimate in its potential for destruction. William is made to undergo the same patrol rituals. His hand, the one that will hold the iron, is sprinkled with holy water. The priest reminds the crowd, and William, of the divine stakes. If he is innocent, God will form an invisible shield around his hand. If he is guilty, God will step aside. It's the same speech, but hearing it as a spectator, with the throbbing pain in your own arm as a fresh memory. It sounds even more insane. You watch William's face. He is trying to be brave, trying to find a core of faith to cling to. He is praying, his lips moving silently. He is trying to believe in the miracle. You know exactly what he is feeling. You know the desperate hope, the cold dread, the frantic, silent bargaining with a God who seems both intimately present and terrifyingly distant. The ordeal by iron was often considered a slightly higher status ordeal than the ordeal by water, a distinction that has long fascinated historians. Some legal codes seem to reserve the iron for freemen, while the water was sometimes used for the lower classes. The reasons for this are a subject of ongoing debate, perhaps having to do with the symbolism of iron and smithing, or perhaps it was just a matter of local custom. To you, it just seems like a different flavor of the same nightmare. The iron is now glowing with an almost liquid heat, a vibrant, angry orange, Osgood, the blacksmith, using a long pair of tongs, carefully lifts it from the fire. A wave of heat washes over the crowd. He carries it, with the reverence of a priest carrying a holy relic, and places it on a small, flat stone near William's feet. The stage is set. The instrument is ready. A man's life, his reputation, and the skin on his hand are all about to be weighed in the balance. The silence that falls over the clearing is absolute, broken only by the hungry crackle of the fire in the faint, high-pitched hum of the cooling iron. William stands before it, his body trembling, his face ashen. He stares at the glowing metal on the stone as if it were a venomous snake poised to strike. This is the moment of truth, the point where theology and reality are about to have a very painful collision. Father Michael steps beside William and points to a spot on the ground. 9 paces, he declares, his voice cutting through the tension. As the law commands, you will take up the iron. You will walk 9 paces, heel to toe, and on the 9th pace, you may cast it down. 9 steps. It doesn't sound like much. You could walk 9 steps in your sleep. But you walk 9 steps while holding a piece of the sun in your bare hand. It is a journey across an eternity of pain. This precise measurement, the 9 paces, is another of those bizarrely specific details that fascinate legal historians. Why die? Some speculate it may have connections to holy numbers, perhaps a third of a third, relating to the Trinity. Others argue it was simply a practical, standardized distance that was considered a fair test of endurance and faith. Whatever the reason, it was the law. A man who dropped the iron on the 8th step was as guilty as one who couldn't lift it at all. Osgood, the blacksmith, now takes on a new role. He is the official measurer. He stands at the end of the prescribed path, his feet planted, a human finish line. William must walk from the stone where the iron rests, directly to him. Father Michael gives William a final, searching look. Put your faith in God, my son, he murmurs. He will not fail you. He then raises his hand, holding it in the air for a long, pregnant moment. The entire village holds its breath. William's eyes are wide, fixed on the priest's hand. When it drops, he moves. There is no hesitation. It's as if his mind has finally surrendered, and his body is moving on pure, terrified instinct. He stoops, and in one swift, desperate motion, he wraps his hand around the glowing iron bar. A sound rips from his throat, a guttural cry of pure, animal agony that is nothing like a human voice. The smell of searing flesh hits the air, sharp and sickeningly sweet, a smell you remember with a fresh wave of nausea. He straightens up, his face a contorted mask of pain. The iron is in his grip. Smoke is literally rising from his hand. He takes the first step. It is a lurch, a drunken stumble, but it is a step. His whole body is convulsing. You can see the muscles in his arm corded like ropes, his knuckles white as he clenches the source of his torment. The second step. A low moan escapes his lips. His eyes are squeezed shut, as if he can block out the pain by blocking out the world. The third step. He is slower now, the initial burst of adrenaline fading, leaving only the raw, consuming fire. This walk, this 9-pace journey, was the ultimate spectacle. It was a piece of living theater, a passion play with a terrifyingly real protagonist. For the onlookers, it was a moment of profound spiritual tension. They were watching a man wrestle not just with a piece of hot metal, but with the very judgment of God. Every faltering step, every cry of pain, was a clue, a piece of evidence in the divine trial. The fourth step. He almost falls, his legs buckling. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. But he catches himself, his body rigid with a desperate, superhuman effort. The fifth step. He is halfway there, an eternity to go. The iron in his hand has begun to cool slightly, the vibrant orange fading to a dull, angry red, but it is still unimaginably hot. The sixth step. He is weeping openly now, tears carving clean paths through the grime on his face. Historians often wonder about the psychological state of a person undergoing this. Did they enter a state of shock that numbed the pain? Did their religious faith create a kind of ecstatic trance? Or was it just a matter of pure, simple willpower? The primal urge to survive and be proven innocent overriding the body's screams to let go. The seventh step. Lay quiet, shuffling advance. The eighth step. He is almost there. Osgood, the blacksmith, watches him come, his expression grim. With one final, shuddering effort, William takes the ninth and final step. He is before Osgood. He has reached the end. His hand opens in a spastic jerk, and the iron bar falls to the dirt with a heavy thud. He glows sullenly on the ground, a malevolent red eye staring up at the sky. William collapses, his legs giving way completely. He falls to his knees, cradling his blackened, smoking hand to his chest, his body racked with shuddering sobs of pain and relief. He did it. He completed the 9 paces. He passed the test. But just like you, his ordeal is far from over. William remains on his knees in the dirt, a collapsed figure of pure agony. The hot iron lies near him, its glow fading, looking almost like an innocent piece of metal now that its terrible work is done. You watch him, and the throbbing in your own freshly bandaged arm seems to intensify in sympathy. You know the landscape of that pain. You know the fire that is currently roaring through his nerves. The shock that is making the world seem distant and unreal. Father Michael allows the dramatic moment to hang in the air for a few seconds before stepping forward. The ritual is not complete. He raises his hands, and a woman with the sobs and linens approaches, her face impassive. The priest's voice cuts through the quiet sobbing. He has completed the 9 paces. He has held the instrument of judgment and cast it down as the law requires. He pauses, letting the crowd absorb the completion of the task. Then he adds the crucial, familiar caveat. But the judgment is not yet rendered. The sign is not yet given. God's miracle is in the healing. It's the same speech, the same theological escape clause. You find yourself mouthing the words along with him. It is a script, a well-worn piece of legal and religious theatre that you have unwillingly become an expert in. The priest kneels beside William, taking the man's ravaged hand with a practiced, clinical grip. William flinches violently, a raw scream tearing from his throat as the priest examines the wound. You don't need to see it up close. You can smell it. You can see the blackened, cracked skin, the angry red flesh beneath. It is a ruin of a hand. Yet, Father Michael inspects it with the calm focus of a craftsman examining his work. He is looking for the same thing he looked for on your arm. The nature of the wound. Is it a clean burn, or is there already a hint of corruption? He seems satisfied. He nods to the healer, who steps forward and begins the binding. The process is a grim echo of your own. The clean linen is wrapped carefully, but firmly, around the burned hand, covering the palm, the back of the hand, and the wrist. Each touch of the cloth makes William shudder. This is another point where historians wonder about the small, unrecorded details. Was the binding on a hand different from the binding on an arm? Were there specific techniques? Some medieval illustrations of these events are maddeningly vague, showing a simple wrap, while legal texts just specify that the wound must be sealed. It's debated whether the method of binding itself could influence the outcome. A bandage wrapped too tightly could restrict blood flow and lead to festering, while a looser wrap might allow for better healing. The priest's own skill, or perhaps his bias, could be hidden in those simple linen folds. Once the hand is a featureless white club, just like your arm, Father Michael prepares the wax and the seal. He warms the dark lump, applies it to the knot in the linen, and presses the church's official seal into it. Thump. The sound is final. William's hand is now also a sealed message to God. Its delivery scheduled for 3 days from now. He has been officially handed over to the Divine Postal Service. The priest and the blacksmith help the weeping, trembling man to his feet. Take him to his home. Father Michael commands, let no one touch the seal. Let no salve or potion be applied. His fate, and the truth of this matter, Now rest with God alone. You watch as William is led away, a new member of your exclusive, miserable club. He stumbles through the crowd, which parts for him with the same mixture of awe and pity they showed you. You know precisely what the next 72 hours will be like for him. You know about the fever that will likely set in tonight. You know about the sleepless nights, where every throb of pain is a potential guilty verdict. You know the obsessive, desperate hope that what you feel is the tingle of a miracle and not the burn of infection. Seeing the entire process from the outside, so soon after enduring it yourself, gives you a strange, cold clarity. You see it for what it is. A terrifyingly effective machine. A system of justice that produces a result. Every single time. Whether through confession, a clean wound, or a festering one. It is a system that cannot fail. Because any outcome is simply interpreted as the will of God. You have been declared innocent by this machine. You wonder, with a fresh chill of fear, what verdict it will deliver for the quiet farmer who cheated on his grain weights. The healer finishes her work, time and neat, practical knot in the clean linen that now encases your throbbing arm. Her touch is surprisingly gentle, a small island of simple, human care in a sea of divine judgment. The crowd has mostly dispersed, shuffling back to their own huts and their own lives. Their appetite for legal spectacle satisfied for the day, only a few people linger, including Oscar, the blacksmith. H.E.S. methodically cleaning up the area, kicking the unburnt logs away from the fire pit, his face thoughtful. He ambles over to you, wiping his sooty hands on his leather apron. He looks at your newly bandaged arm, then at your face. You were fortunate, he says, his voice a low rumble, or blessed, depends on your view of it. You manage a weak nod, fortunate, blessed, and in a great deal of pain. You reply, the words coming out as a dry croak. You look in the direction that William was taken. Are they all like this, with fire? Osgood lets out a short, humorless laugh. Oh no, there are other ways. If you don't have a taste for being cooked, there's always the water. You think H.E.S. talking about your ordeal, the cauldron. I'd had my fill of hot water, thank you. Not the hot, he says, shaking his head. He jerks his thumb in the direction of the slow-moving river that winds its way around the edge of the village. A ribbon of brown and green under the grey sky. The cold. The IUD I assume are quite frigid. He explains it with the simple, matter-of-fact tone of a man describing how to shoe a horse. It is, he says, often used for those accused of the most unnatural crimes, like witchcraft or sorcery. It is also, he adds, the most baffling of all the trials. It's the opposite of what you think, he says, leaning on his hammer. With the fire, God's miracle is that you don't get burned. With the cold water, the miracle is that that you sink. You stare at him, certain that your fever is making you mishear things. Sink. You're supposed to sink. Aye, he nods. Sinking is for the innocent. The logic, as he lays it out, is a piece of beautiful, terrifying, upside-down theology. The river, he explains, is a pure body of water, an element of God's pristine creation. As such, it has a natural affinity for that which is also pure. If an innocent person, with a clean soul, is thrown into the water, the pure water will recognize a kindred spirit and embrace them, drawing them down into its depths. It will accept them. But a guilty person, he continues, has a soul that is corrupted, tainted by sin and in league with the devil. They are spiritually buoyant. The pure water, repulsed by this corruption, will refuse to accept them. It will reject them, pushing them back to the surface. Therefore, if you are thrown into the river and you float, it is a clear and undeniable sign of your guilt. You try to process this. So to prove your innocence, you have to drown. Oscar grunts. Well, that's the tricky bit, isn't it? He explains the procedure. They don't just toss you in. First, they bind you. And this binding is an art form in itself. a specific and bizarre contortion. They tie your right thumb to your left big toe, and your left thumb to your right big toe, pulling your body into a cramped, awkward knot. This strange posture, a fascinatedly weird detail of the process, makes any kind of swimming or controlled movement completely impossible. You are a human bundle, trussed up and helpless. Then, Osgood says, they tie a rope around your waist. We're not savages, after all. The rope is held by a stout man on the riverbank. He pauses. Usually me. This rope is the key. You are thrown in. If you sink, Osgood and his companions will haul you back out, sputtering and half-drowned, but gloriously, miraculously innocent. If you float, they will drag you out to face the punishment for the guilty. This raises so many questions, questions that historians still argue about endlessly. How long did you have to sink to be considered innocent? Was it a few seconds? A full minute? Was there a risk of the rope pullers being a bit too slow, leading to a verdict of innocently deceased? And how much did the body type of the accused play into it? A person with more body fat would be naturally more buoyant. A fact of physics that medieval theology had no room for. Was a skinny man more likely to be found innocent than a stout one? The practical application of this ordeal is a messy, unresolved historical puzzle. You look at Osgood, the man who would literally hold your life on the end of a rope. You look at a distant, muddy river. It no longer seems like a simple source of water for washing and fishing. It is a judge, a vast, cold, liquid arbiter of guilt and innocence, where the price of a good name could very well be the last breath in your body. You thought you had survived the worst the system had to offer. You now realize you had only seen the options that came with a side of heat. The idea of the cold water ordeal settles in your mind, a cold, dumb dread that is somehow worse than the memory of the fire. The thought of being trussed up like a holiday goose and tossed into the murky depths of the river is a primal, suffocating fear. Osgood, seeing the look on your face, seems to take a certain grim satisfaction in your reaction. He shifts his weight, the blacksmith storyteller, ready to elaborate on this particularly chilling chapter of medieval justice. It's not for everyone, mind you, he says, as if discussing a peculiar local dish. You won't see a respectable merchant accused of cheating on his taxes being dunked like a witch. No, the cold water that's for special cases. It's for crimes that are seen as an affront to God's natural order. He lowers his voice, though there's no one nearby to overhear. Witchcraft, he says. The word a low hiss. That's the main one. When old Agnes from the edge of the woods was accused of souring the village milk with a curse, they took her to the river. You remember Agnes, a strange, solitary woman who kept to herself unmumbled at her chickens. She disappeared last spring. You'd assumed she'd simply died or moved on. No, a more sinister possibility presents itself. Osgood describes the scene, and you can picture it perfectly. It would have been another village gathering, another day of morbid, pious entertainment. But this time, the focus would not be a fire pit, but the rickety wooden bridge that crossed the river. The entire village would be there, lining the muddy banks, their faces turned towards the water. Father Michael would be present, of course, to lend the proceedings a holy gravity. He would bless the river, just as he blessed the cauldron and the iron. He would stand on the bridge and perform an exorcism on the water, commanding it to become an instrument of truth. I adjure you, boom water, he would chant, his voice echoing over the slow-moving current. In the name of the Almighty Father, that you do not receive the body of this person if they are guilty of the crime of witchcraft, but make them to float upon you, as a sign of their corruption. Then, Agnes, a frail old woman, would be brought forward. She would be bound in that specific, humiliating way thumb to opposite her. It's a detail that has long perplexed historians. Was it merely to prevent swimming? Or did the contorted posture have a deeper, symbolic meaning? Some have suggested it was meant to imitate the shape of a cross, or perhaps to disrupt the body's natural energies in a way that would make demonic influence more apparent. it remains a bizarre, undebated aspect of the ritual. With the rope tied securely around her waist, she would be pushed, or perhaps gently lowered, from the bridge into the cold, brown water. Osgood would be the one holding the rope, his knuckles white, his face a mask of concentration. The rope was her only connection to the world of the living. Then, the terrible, silent waiting. All eyes would be on the spot where she disappeared beneath the surface. They would be watching for one of two things. Would the rope go taut, indicating she had sunk to the bottom like a stone, a pure soul accepted by the pure water, or would she reappear? Would her head break the surface, her body bobbing and floating, rejected by the water, her guilt made plain for all to see? You can imagine the tension of that moment, the held breaths, the frantic, silent prayers of those who knew her, and the smug, knowing glances of her accusers. The river, for that one long minute, would become the most important thing in the world. Perverse, liquid oracle, Agnes' entire life, her character, her very soul, would be judged by the simple physics of buoyancy. Her fate would be decided not by a jury of her peers, but by the dispassionate, indifferent laws of displacement, a law that none of them understood, but which they all believed was being personally directed by the hand of God. You find your voice, a dry whisper. So what happened to Agnes? Did she sink or float? Osgood spits into the dirt, a gesture of grim finality. Oh, she floated, he sounds, his voice flat, but dries up like a cork. Never seen anything like it. You try to wrap your mind around the scene. A frail old woman, trussed and bound, breaking the surface of the river, gasping for air. To you, it sounds like a desperate, primal struggle for survival. To the medieval villagers lining the bank, it was something else entirely. It was a sign, a divine proclamation. As soon as her head was above the water. That was it, Osgood continues. Father Michael made the sign of the cross. Her guilt was proven. The water itself had refused her. He explains the theological gymnastics behind this belief, and it's a masterclass in pretzel logic. The theory, as preached by the priest, was rooted in the sacrament of baptism. When a person is baptized, they are cleansed of original sin and accepted into the community of Christ. The holy water of baptism welcomes them, a which, however, was believed to have renounced their baptism. They had, in essence, spiritually divorced themselves from God and His church. Therefore, any body of consecrated water and the priest's blessing had just turned the river into one would recognize this spiritual break. The water, in an act of holy repulsion, would physically push the corrupted, unbaptized body away. Floating wasn't a matter of physics. It was a matter of spiritual rejection. It's a perfect, closed loop of an argument, utterly immune to reason. Any attempt to introduce a practical explanation would be dismissed as heresy, pointing out that Agnes was a bit plump and wearing a thick woolen dress that likely trapped a lot of air would be met with blank stares. Suggesting that the way a person was thrown in might affect whether they float or sink would be seen as questioning the very mechanics of God's judgment. So they pulled her out, Osgood says, and her floating was all the proof they needed. He doesn't elaborate on what happened next, but he doesn't have to. The punishment for witchcraft was not a fine or a shaming. It was death. The ordeal by cold water, in cases like this, was really a trial to determine guilt. It was often just a ceremonial confirmation of a guilt that the community had already decided upon. Historians have long debated the true nature of this specific ordeal. Was it, as some have argued, a deliberate trial of no escape? If you sank, you drowned and were declared innocent. If you floated, you were declared guilty and executed. A classic catch-22. However, many scholars now argue this is an oversimplification. The presence of the rope, held by a designated official, was a crucial detail. The intention was not for the innocent to drown. The goal was for them to sink briefly, be declared innocent, and then be pulled out, shivering and terrified, but alive. The ordeal was stacked against the accused in a terrifying way, but it wasn't necessarily designed to be automatically fatal. Still, the sheer absurdity of it is staggering. Your own trial by hot water was a brutal, straightforward test of flesh against heat. This is a test of theology against hydrodynamics, and theology was always going to win. You find yourself wondering how many innocent people, whose bodies just happened to be naturally buoyant, were condemned by this bizarre, holy swimming test. How many lives were ruined because of the way their clothes trapped air bubbles, or the density of their own bones. The very idea that a person's moral worth could be measured by their displacement in water is one of the most alien and disturbing concepts from this era. It shows a world so steeped in the supernatural, so convinced of constant divine micromanagement, that even the most basic laws of nature were reinterpreted as messages from God. The river was a river. It was a divine courtroom, and the bubbles that might get trapped in a woolen tunic were not bubbles. They were the physical manifestation of a corrupted soul. You look over at the lazy, brown river, and it now seems like the most sinister thing in the entire village. The throbbing in your arm feels like a dull, stupid drumbeat. You were judged by a pot of water. Agnes, the unfortunate milk curdler, was judged by a river. William, the farmer, is currently being judged by the skin on his hand. A thought, born of fever and a deep, blossoming sense of injustice, begins to form in your mind. Osgood, you say, your voice raspy. Does everyone have to do this? What about Sir Robert? Up at the manor, if someone accused him of stealing a horse, would the priest make him carry hot iron? Osgood stops his clean-up and lets out a great, booming laugh that seems to shake the very air. It's the first genuine laugh you've heard all day, and it's a bitter, cutting sound. Sir Robert, he chortles, wiping a tear of mirth from his eye, carry hot iron, by the saints. The day a nobleman has to prove his innocence like a common peasant is the day the pigs learn to sing hymns. He leans in, his expression turning serious. Conspiratorial. You see, the nobility, they have their own kind of ordeal. A much more dignified way to have God sort things out. It's called trial by combat. The words conjure an image of two knights in shining armor, clashing swords in a grand tournament. It sounds heroic, noble, a world away from the pathetic, humiliating agony you endured. They fight. U.S. They just fight each other. It's not just a fight. Osgood corrects, though his tone suggests he thinks otherwise. It's a judicium day, same as yours, a judgment of God. But instead of asking God to cool the water, they ask him to guide the sword. They believe the Lord would never allow a righteous man, one speaking the truth, to be defeated in a fair fight. Victory is innocence, defeat is guilt. The injustice of it hits you like a physical blow. You had to face a cauldron of boiling water over a chicken a nobleman gets to settle a dispute over, say, 100 acres of land, by practicing the one skill he has been trained in since he was a boy. It's not just a different trial, it's a different world. Osgood explains the process. It was a tavern brawl. It was a solemn ceremony. The two nobles, the accuser and the accused, would meet at a designated place afield, a castle courtyard. They would come armed, usually with a sword and shield, Father Michael, or a higher-ranking bishop if the men were important enough, would be there to preside. Each man would have to lay his hand on a holy relic, the bone of a saint, perhaps, and swear his oath. One would swear the accusation was true, the other that it was false. Then, after prayers and blessings upon their weapons, they would fight, to the death, or until one man yielded, admitting his guilt. The winner was not just the better fighter, he was the man God had chosen. His victory was divine proof of his truthfulness. The loser, if he survived, was not only shamed but also legally declared a perjurer. He could be fined, imprisoned, or even executed right then and there. And the best part is, Osgood says with a wry grin, if the man is old, or weak, Or maybe H.E. is a clergyman who isn't supposed to shed blood. He doesn't have to fight himself. He can hire a champion. You stare at him, dumbfounded. He can pay someone to be innocent for him. He can pay a strong man to fight on his behalf, Osgood clarifies. The champion's victory is his victory. God, it is said, would guide the champions on just the same. This is the detail that breaks your brain. Irish. Guilty man could simply hire the most fearsome warrior in the Shire to prove his innocence. Justice was not just blind. It was for sale to the highest bidder with the strongest ordeal. This very point is something learned men are still said to argue about. Was trial by combat a genuine expression of faith in divine justice? Or was it simply a socially acceptable way for the warrior class to resolve disputes through controlled violence? Did they truly believe God was directing every parry and thrust, or was it just an admission that in their world, might often did make right, and they simply put a holy seal of approval on the outcome? You look at your bandaged arm, a symbol of your ordeal, your proof of innocence. Sir Robert would never have to endure such a thing. His proof would be a dented shield and a defeated opponent. You live under the same sky, the same king, the same God. But you have learned, in the most brutal way possible, that you are not living under the same law. There is one kind of justice for men who work the land, and another, entirely, for the men who own it. Your arm throbs in time with your own simmering resentment. The idea of nobles settling matters with a good, clean sword fight while you're left with a scalded limb is a bitter pill to swallow. Osgood, seeing your dark expression, decides to offer one more tidbit from the bizarre menu of medieval justice, perhaps as a strange form of comfort. Well, it's not all fire and water and swords, he says, leaning on his hammer as if settling in for a long chat. There is another way, a much quieter, stranger way, mostly for priests. I say, it's called the ordeal of the cursed morsel. You look at him, bewildered. The cursed morsel. What, do they have to eat rotten food? Not rotten, Osgood chuckles. Holy, that's the trick of it. He goes on to describe what is surely one of the strangest legal procedures ever invented. The cause ned, as it was sometimes called, was a trial by bread, or sometimes cheese. It was reserved almost exclusively for clergymen accused of a crime, as it was considered unseemly for a man of God to be boiled, dunked, or engaged in a bloody duel. Their ordeal had to be more theological. The procedure was deceptively simple. A priest accused of a crime would be brought before his bishop. A small piece of barley bread, or a lump of cheese, usually weighing about an ounce, would be placed on the altar. A special mass would be said over it, a long and terrifyingly specific prayer that essentially turned this mundane piece of food into a divine weapon. The priest would ask God to let this morsel be a test of truth. Then came the moment of judgment. The accused priest would have to stand before the altar and make his oath of innocence. He would then pray aloud, asking that if he were guilty, the angel Gabriel would seize his throat and he would be unable to swallow the morsel. He would essentially dare God to choke him if he was lying. After that, he had to put the consecrated bread or cheese in his mouth and attempt to eat it. You try to picture it. A solemn church, filled with chanting priests, an accused man, his face pale with sweat, trying to swallow a lump of dry bread under the watchful eye of God and his immediate superiors. There was no fire, no water, no blood. The entire ordeal was an internal, psychological battle. The belief was, Osgood explains, that a guilty man, his soul heavy with the sin of his crime and the blasphemy of a false oath, would find his throat closing up. He would choke and sputter, unable to get it down, and that would be his sign of guilt. It's an ordeal that operates on pure psychosomatic principles. The sheer terror and anxiety of the situation would be enough to make anyone's mouth go dry. Trying to swallow a piece of dry barley bread when you are petrified is a genuine physical challenge. In a way, it was the most scientifically sound of all the ordeals, though they wouldn't have understood it that way. They saw it as a miracle, we would see it as a panic attack. Osgood tells a story, a famous one that all the priests know, about a powerful earl in the days of the old kings. The earl was accused of murdering the king's brother. To prove his innocence, he agreed to undergo the ordeal of the morsel. Before the king enters court, he swore his oath and popped the blessed bread into his mouth. According to the legend, he immediately choked, fell to the ground, and died. Whether this story is true or just a cautionary tale is something the chroniclers and historians still argue about. But it perfectly illustrates the power of the belief. The ordeal of the morsel turned a man's own body against him. His guilt or innocence was not written on his skin by an external force, but revealed by the involuntary muscles in his own throat. You think about this strange, quiet trial. It is still terrifying, but it seems cleaner, less brutal. There are no bandages, no sobs, no risk of a festering wound. The outcome is immediate. You choke, or you do not. So you ask Osgood, a flicker of dark humor in your voice. Do you think I could have chosen the bread instead of the cauldron? Osgood snorts. A peasant choosing a priest's trial. You'd have a better chance of being chosen as the next pope. He pats your good shoulder with a heavy, soot-stained hand. No, my friend, for the likes of us, our truth is written in our skin, not in our throats. First get used to it. His words are not meant to be cruel. They are just a statement of fact, a simple summary of the unshakable, unchangeable order of your world. The healer gives your new bandage a final, gentle pat. Keep it clean, she murmurs, her voice full of a practical kindness that feels a world away from the high-flown theology of the past few days. And pray, a little prayer never hurts a wound. She gathers her things and leaves you, alone with your thoughts in the ever-present, throbbing pain in your arm. You are innocent. The word echoes in your mind, but the victory feels hollow, incomplete. Use it on the stool in the middle of the deserted clearing, contemplating the brutal arithmetic of medieval justice. You have won your case, but what, exactly, have you won? Your name is cleared. Thomas can no longer accuse you of being a chicken thief. Your neighbors, who a few days ago were ready to condemn you based on a single feather, now smile and nod as they pass. Your reputation, a fragile and vital currency in a small village, is restored. That is the prize. And what was the cost? You look down at your arm. The burn is deep. The healer has told you that the flesh will scar badly. You will likely never have the same strength in that arm again. The muscles and sinews have been cooked, damaged in a way that no herbal salve can fully mend. For the rest of your life, you will carry a physical reminder of your innocence, a pocket, discolored roadmap of pain that testifies to your vindication by God. It is a strange, cruel irony. Your proof of innocence is a permanent injury. You think about the other possible outcome. What if the wound had festered? What if Father Michael, peering at your arm, had seen the dreaded yellow sign of putrefaction? What would have happened then? The verdict would have been guilty. Your false oath would have been exposed. You would be a liar, a thief, and a blasphemer. The community that now congratulates you would have turned on you in an instant. The sentence would have been swift and brutal. For felony theft, the punishment was often corporal. You might have been taken to the village stocks, your head and hands locked in place for days, a target for rotten vegetables and public scorn. Or far worse, they could have ordered a mutilation, the branding of a thief or thief onto your forehead with a hot iron. Or, most terrifyingly, the amputation of a hand, the very hand that was supposed to have stolen the chicken. A brutally literal, symbolic justice. And Thomas, your accuser, would have been vindicated. He would have been entitled to compensation, not just for his lost hen, but for the trouble of having to bring you to justice. You would have been ruined, shamed, and broken, all because of the way your body reacted to a severe burn. This stark, binary outcome is what made the system so powerful and so terrifying. There was no room for nuance, for mitigating circumstances, for a verdict of not proven. The ordeal produced a clear winner and a clear loser. It settled the matter, definitively untheatrically, in a way that a simple hearing never could. It provided the community with a sense of closure, a belief that divine order had been restored. Historians still debate the social function of these public, brutal punishments. Were they purely about deterrence, a way to scare others into obedience? Or were they also a form of communal catharsis, a ritual that purged the village of a perceived sinner and reaffirmed its collective values? The public nature of your trial, your judgment, and your potential punishment suggests it was as much a performance for the community as it was a trial for you. You look towards the path where William, the farmer accused of cheating on his grain, was laid away. His 3-day wait has just begun. He is in that dark limbo you just escaped, wondering if a patch of dead skin on his hand will mean the end of his life as he knows it. And what about the nobles? You wonder. In their trials by combat, the winner is innocent, his honor restored. The loser, if he lives, is guilty and shame. But at least their trial is a test of a skill they value. At least they have some agency, some control over the outcome, however illusory. Your fate was decided by your immune system. You won. You are the lucky one. You only have to live with a lifetime of pain on the scarred arm. It is a strange and bitter prize. You slowly, painfully, push yourself to your feet. It is time to go home and try to pick up the pieces of a life that was almost shattered by a single missing chicken. Weeks turn into a month, then 2. The raw, angry burn on your arm slowly subsides, collapsing into a permanent scar. It's a strange, glossy patch of skin, tight and puckered, a constant, physical reminder of your innocence. You've learned to work around it, favoring your other arm for heavy tasks. Life in the village has returned to its normal, muddy rhythm. The story of your ordeal, once the most exciting piece of gossip, has faded, replaced by newer, more immediate concerns: a sick cow, a leaky roof, the upcoming harvest. You've also learned what happened to William, the quiet farmer. His ordeal did not end as well as yours. On the 3rd day, when Father Michael unsealed his hand, the wound was found to be festering. The verdict was guilty. He was hanged. But his punishment was a grim spectacle. He was branded on the cheek with the mark of a thief and had 2 fingers of his right hand, the hand obliquely amputated. He is a broken man now, a walking ruin who shuffles through the village, his face averted, his life effectively over. His guilt and your innocence were decided by the same arbitrary system. The only difference was the way your bodies healed. You had come to accept this as the way of the world. Justice was a painful, terrifying lottery, a system of divine signs and brutal consequences. It was as fixed and unchangeable as the rising of the sun. And then, one day, a rider arrives. He isn't a nobleman or a soldier, just a dusty, tired-looking man on a tired-looking horse, carrying a leather satchel. He goes directly to the priest's hut. A few hours later, after the Sunday Mass, Father Michael asks everyone to remain. His face is a strange mixture of confusion and solemnity. He unrolls a piece of parchment, a rare and important object in your world, and reads from it. The news is so strange, so utterly world-altering, that at first, no one understands it. The message is from the bishop, but the order, he explains, comes from a place of almost mythical power. It comes from the Pope, in Rome. The priest announces that a great council of the church has been held, a meeting of all the most important bishops and abbots in Christendom, a gathering known as the Fourth Lateran Council. This council, led by a powerful and energetic Pope named Innocent III, had issued a whole host of new decrees. This Pope was a busy man, a micromanager on a continental scale. The council decided on the precise theological nature of communion. It set rules for marriage, and it even mandated that Jews and Muslims living in Christian lands must wear special clothing to distinguish them from Christians. A small, chilling detail that shows the extent of the church's reach into every aspect of daily life. But then Father Michael gets to the decree that matters to you. He takes a deep breath and reads the order that will shatter your entire understanding of justice. Canon 18. By the supreme authority of the Holy Father and the Council, all clergy, all priests, are henceforth forbidden from taking any part in a trial by ordeal. They are forbidden from conducting the rites, from saying the prayers, from blessing the water or the iron. A confused murmur ripples through the small congregation. What does it mean? Father Michael looks up from the parchment, his eyes meeting yours for a brief, significant moment. He explains, the ordeal, the Judicium Dei, is not just a test of endurance. It is a sacred rite, a formal request for a miracle, and what makes it sacred is the priest. It is his prayers, his blessing, his consecration of the instruments that turns a pot of boiling water into a divine courtroom. Without the priest, what is it? The realization dawning on you, and on everyone else, with a slow, dawning horror and confusion. Without the priest's blessing, the ordeal of hot water is just a man sticking his arm in a pot of boiling water. The ordeal of hot iron is just a man burning his hand on a piece of metal. It is no longer a judgment of God. It is just torture. The magic is gone. The divine sanction has been withdrawn. A very important memo has come down from head office in Rome, and it says that this entire method of justice is no longer approved. Why? After centuries of using this system, was it suddenly being shut down? This is a question historians still debate endlessly. Some argue it was a sign of a growing intellectual movement, a shift towards more rational, evidence-based legal thinking. Theologians had started to argue that the ordeals were a form of tempting God, of demanding a miracle, which was a sin. Others believe it was more of a power play. The Church wanted to consolidate its own legal system, the canon law courts, and get out of the messy business of secular, local justice. Pope Innocent I may have simply decided that having his priests officiate over what amounted to ritualized maiming was bad for the Church's brand. Whatever the reason, the effect is the same. The system is broken. The legal foundation of your world has been cracked. Thomas cannot accuse an Abram demand he carry hot iron. The lord of the manor cannot sentence a suspected witch to the cold water ordeal. The entire apparatus of divine judgment has been, with the reading of a single piece of parchment, unplugged. You look down at the scar on your arm. You, William, and countless others are the last generation to bear the marks of this strange, brutal faith. The great, centuries-long experiment in outsourcing justice to God is over. And no one is quite sure what comes next. The months following the Pope's decree are a time of strange, quiet confusion. It's as if the village has forgotten how to argue properly. Minor disputes, which before might have escalated to an oath and the threat of an ordeal, now just simmer, unresolved, without the ultimate, terrifying T-breaker. People are forced to either let their grievances go or find other, messier ways to settle them. You see more shouting matches, a few more fistfights. The absence of divine judgment has left a vacuum, and no one is sure what is supposed to fill it. The first real test of this new, ordeal-less world comes, as you might have guessed, with another chicken. This time it belongs to a weaver named John, and his prize hen has vanished. His immediate suspect is a young, shiftless man named Peter, who is known more for his talent for finding trouble than for doing any honest work. In the old days, the path would have been clear. John would have raised the hue and cry. Peter would have been dragged to Father Michael. Both would have been sworn. An instrument of judgment would have been blessed. But now, that path is a dead end. Still, old habits die hard. John, red-faced and furious, drags Peter to the priest's hut. You, along with a few other curious neighbors, follow along to see what will happen. You stole my head, John bellows, shoving Peter forward. I demand a trial. The ordeal of the iron. Father Michael simply shakes his head, a weary, almost sad expression on his face. He holds up the parchment from the bishop. Cannot, he says, his voice quiet but firm. The Holy Father has forbidden it. My hands are tied. John is apoplectic. Then what are we to do? Just let him get away with it. This is no longer a matter for the church to decide with a sign. The priest replies, "It is a matter for the king's law. Take him to the reeve." And so, the whole Surrey procession trudges up the hill to the small, sturdy house of the reeve, the local official appointed by the lord of the manor. The reeve is a practical, humorless man named Hugh, whose job is to collect taxes, enforce the Lord's will, and generally keep the peace. He listens to the sputtering accusation from John and the sullen denials from Peter, his brow furrowed in thought. He, too, is in uncharted territory. He can't order an ordeal, so what can he do? He looks around at the small crowd of onlookers, at you, at Osgood, at a few other farmers and craftsmen who have lived in the village their whole lives. And then, he has an idea. It's not a brilliant, revolutionary idea. It's a simple, practical one. He points at a dozen of you. You, he says. And you. And you. You are all honest, law-abiding men of this village. You know these two. You know their characters. You know who is trustworthy and who is a liar. You will decide this. You are all stunned into silence. Decide. How are you supposed to decide? You don't have access to God's opinion on the matter. Talk to people. The reeve says, his voice full of a new, experimental authority. Ask questions. Find out who saw what. Peter, where were you this morning? John, where exactly did you last see the hen? You 12. He points at your group again. Will be the jury. You will inquire into the truth of the matter and give me your verdict. And just like that, you are part of the awkward, stumbling birth of a new kind of justice. This is the origin of the jury, a detail many people don't realize. Early juries weren't impartial outsiders who knew nothing of the case. They were the opposite. They were chosen precisely because they were locals, because they might have heard or seen something, because they knew the reputations of the people involved. They weren't just a jury, they were a team of deputized investigators. Your group of 12 shuffles into a circle in the middle of the muddy street. It's a clumsy, uncertain process. You start asking questions. Osgood, with his booming voice, takes a kind of lead. You discover that one woman thought she saw Peter near John's hen house early in the morning. Another man says he saw Peter trying to sell a hen that looked suspiciously like the weavers down by the river. The evidence is circumstantial, based on gossip and hearsay, but it's more than you had in your own trial. You had a feather. This case has witnesses. After much argument and debate, your small group comes to a consensus. You believe Peter is guilty. You go back to the reeve and deliver your verdict. Not a divine one, written in flesh, but a human one, forged from conversation and suspicion. The reeve nods, and sentences Peter to a day in the stocks and to page on the price of 2 hens. The justice is small, local, and deeply imperfect. It's based on your own biases and your neighbor's gossip. But as you walk away, you look down at the puckered scar on your arm. You think about William and his mutilated hand. This new way is messy. It's uncertain. It relies on the flawed judgment of ordinary, fallible men, but it doesn't involve glowing iron or boiling water. The responsibility for justice has been taken from the unknowable mind of God and placed into the clumsy, capable hands of the community. Historians will debate for centuries about whether this was a step towards enlightenment or just a different kind of flawed system. But you know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that it is better. It is a world away from the ordeal. And for the first time in a long time, the future of justice feels a little less terrifying. And so, the world you've been walking through begins to soften at the edges. The sharp memory of the boiling water cools and fades, like steam rising into a quiet evening sky. The angry red of the glowing iron dims to a soft, gentle ember, a distant warmth in the back of your mind. The shouts of the crowd, the solemn chants of the priest, they all dissolve into a low, peaceful hum, like the sound of the wind in the trees. Though, far away, you can feel the scratchy straw of your palate transforming into something softer, something that supports you completely. The smoky air of the hut clears. replaced by the clean, calm scent of your own quiet room. The story is over. It has done its work, carrying you from the noisy, troubled world of the day into this peaceful, gentle space that exists just on the edge of sleep. There are no more trials to endure, no more judgments to fear. There is only this comfortable darkness, this deep and easy stillness. You can see your own breath, slow and rhythmic, a quiet tide pulling you further and further out into a calm sea of rest. Your body feels heavy now, in the most pleasant way, sinking softly into the support beneath you, letting go of all effort, of all thought. You are at peace, and you are drifting gently now, into the quiet landscape of your own dreams. Our journey together tonight ends here, in this quiet place. Should you need another tale to accompany you further into rest, my library of stories is always open for you. May your dreams be kind. Good night.